start from the beginning. Your name is Otsile.
Otsile Sefolo.
Otsile Sefolo. And you from?
I'm from Pretoria.
Pretoria boy.
Yeah. Originally from the villages of Matlaila, dusty streets of Matlaila. And when I was in 1993, parents decided to move to Mabopane.
Yeah. And you've been there ever since?
We've been in Mabopane ever since, yes.
Yeah. And your fashion line is called?
Otis Seflo.
Otis Seflo. So that's a play of words on your name.
I mean, growing up again at school, you know how you always get a nickname?
Yes.
So a lot of people go, hey, Otsile, it sounds too long. And they started calling me Otis. So you grew up being this Otis, everything. And when I went to go get my ID, the first issue, they misspelled my surname. So instead of it coming back as Otsile Sefolo, it came back as Otsile Seflo. So they forgot one O. I'm like, oh cool, Seflo sounds very cool. Yeah. And then I ran with it. So that's where the whole Otis Seflo came from Otis being my childhood name, and Seflo being my surname without an O.
Oh, that's cool. Did you go to fashion school?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I went to Lysov.
Did you go to Lysov?
Yes, I went to
Pretoria,
Lysov.
Johannesburg?
No, the Johannesburg one.
Okay.
It's a very funny story.
Tell me.
Before Lysov, I mean, when I matriculated, after passing very well, exceptionally well, parents were like, oh, no, what are you going to study? I'm like, fashion. They're like, nope, no child of us is going to study fashion. So I was dumped at Tax, where I had to study becoming internal auditing. Did auditing. After doing auditing, worked for some time. I hated it, and the one day I was so miserable. I remember I went on holiday for like a whole December and January where I didn't know what to do with my life. And I was with a friend, like, why don't you try fashion? I mean, you love dressing up, you make your own clothes already. Go try it as a career. There's a school called Lysov. I had never even heard of a Lysov in my life before. And I'm like, what is this Lysov? And she went as far as Googling it, and it's like, this is Lysov. It's in Rosebank. Go and apply. Funny enough, I went and I applied at Lysov by myself without my parents baking at the time. And I wrote the selection test. And to my surprise, they admitted me on the spot. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's see how it goes. And then very difficult 3 years of my life, because I couldn't even afford to pay school fee. And my parents would not budge. And at the time, financially, they had exhausted their funds with me being a tax. So now having to move now to Lysov, it was very tricky, because now there's no money. And I have to now be based in Joburg. Here I am, I'm a Pretoria boy. I was studying a tax very close to home. Whenever something happens, I could easily go home. Now I'm in Joburg, which is a bit further away from the parents. Very difficult years, I must say.
So did you do design or management?
I did design.
Okay. Full
on design. The crazy thing is, over the 3 years that I studied at Lysov, I spent about 80%, 70 to 80% outside of lectures, because my school fees was never paid in time. So you're not allowed to attend. So I'd go to campus. I remember the one day, it was so embarrassing. You know when you're in class and you're excited and you're loving this fashion thing, and they come and they call your name out and like, oh, go see their accountant. When I get this, like, but you're not allowed to be in class. What are you doing in class?
So you didn't know the rules?
Not that I didn't know the rules, but I mean, I was so hungry. I wanted to study fashion. And unfortunately, I wasn't going to let me not having money get in my way of studying fashion. So
what would happen now if Lysov start claiming you?
I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. I mean, but I mean, they've really helped me out a lot. Ingrid, I enjoyed working with Ingrid. I'm very good at pattern making right now because of her. I'd like to believe that she really helped me out a lot.
And then, were you there at the time when Nicola Cooper was teaching trends?
No.
Oh, you went to the Pretoria one?
No, I went to the Joburg one.
To the Joburg.
But I mean, that was in 2008, between 2008 and 2011.
I see. Did you do a postgrad maybe?
No.
No.
The minute I was done, I was like, yeah, started working and started my own brand.
So, okay, you had difficulties finding this degree for an education that you're really passionate about, a subject that you're really passionate about. How did you manage to pay off? Lysov is not cheap.
I know.
It's a private institution. They're not cheap.
Like I'm telling you, it was very, very tough. But
were you working?
No, I wasn't.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was making ends meet from making pens for this client and that client, but I never got to go look for like a proper job where I was working full time. So I had to now make like small low amounts monies to survive, and eventually my parents came around and they paid for the fees.
Nice. And then your first degree from the University of Pretoria was in?
Was in becoming internal auditing.
Have you ever practiced or worked in a corporate setting?
I did, but for a short period of time. I mean, a year, and I think I quit by September, like from February up until September, and that was it. And I never looked back. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like it. I was very young at the time. I wasn't ready for corporate world as well, so it was a bit daunting.
Okay, and then how would you say now that degree helps you in the running of your business?
I mean, the background that I have in accounting is actually helping me out a lot, because right now I am more financially savvy. I know how to run a business better, mainly because of the background that I have, the finance background that I have, and it makes it easier for me to invoice. It makes it easier to run the business, because a lot of designers make a mistake of focusing only on the glitz and glamour side of fashion, but they neglect the business side of fashion. So I'm equipped on both sides. I've got both the academic backing from the finance department and fashion.
Yeah. And had you not done your auditing degree, what mistakes do you think that you would have done?
I probably would have run the business down the ground. I mean, I've seen a whole lot of designers that have boomed overnight, and they were not able to sustain it because they neglected the business side of fashion. They only focused, oh, I want to be famous, or I want to dress people, I want to make beautiful clothes. But then there's more to it than just making beautiful garments. It has to be a business, and it has to be a lucrative business.
Yeah. And then what more to it is there that you have noticed since the beginning till now?
Yeah. As in, what more can I do?
What more does it take to build a fashion line?
A fashion line, to have a successful fashion line, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of patience. If you're not patient, you are gonna drown. It's a very, very, very difficult space in a very difficult environment. We're having a conversation about gatekeepers, so it becomes even more tricky having to break into the industry, because mainly there's certain people that would make sure that certain people get to be shown and be at the forefront of everything else, and the talented ones that are hungry, they don't even get time of day. So I personally feel that there's still a whole lot more that one can still do, and in terms of adding on to the fashion industry and changing the dynamics a bit.
Yeah. Okay. After how long did you start your line post-graduation?
I started working in my first year. I was hungry. I had to make ends meet. I remember I used to live off what do you call this? Chicken livers and pap. That was like my staple diet throughout, across my whole first year. Literally every day I would eat chicken livers and pap. I would cook it differently all the time, and mainly because I couldn't afford to buy anything else. And so I mean, what was the question again?
No, I mean, like, after graduation, did you start the line soon after graduation? It was already going whilst you were still in school?
It was already going. It started in my first year. In my first year, I mean, I think 4 months into studying fashion, I had already started my label. I was already making clothes for people.
Yeah. And if you a grade 12 learner who has interest in going into fashion, studying fashion design, would you advise them to start their own fashion business after graduation, or would you advise them to intern and do the work and then only?
I would advise for them to go in intern. They must go and work in a more corporate space first before they come into fashion. I understand that ultimately you want to be your own boss, you want to be a fashion designer and all of that, but I personally feel that they need to learn certain skills that you can only get in a more corporate environment. Like maybe go be a fashion buyer, or go be a trend forecaster for a big company like your Edcons or your Mr. Price Group or something like that. That way it will equip you in terms of learning how to run a business and deadlines and making sure that everything is done on time. Because I find that a whole lot of fashion designers are struggling in that regard, where they're able to make beautiful clothes, but they don't have the respect for time. and that's what kills the business. Not that we're not able to cater for our market and produce beautiful quality clothing. The issue now becomes when you deliver a wedding dress 5 hours late on the day of the wedding. Small little things like that.
Yeah. And then in terms of like the consumer side of things, like a South African consumer who buys custom-made clothing like Otis Seflo, where do you think that taste is? Is there education that's needed? What they still don't understand in terms of pricing, in terms of like overall, what is the general?
You know, a couple of years ago, I wouldn't be able to answer that question because I didn't understand myself and the direction that I wanted the brand to take. But right now, what I'm finding now is that a lot of people are becoming more and more opinionated in their dress sense, and a lot more people are getting to a point where they want to look unique, and it's about the look and feel. It's about looking different, and unfortunately, you can't look different when you're shopping from mass-produced stores.
Yes.
And so I find it now that I get a whole lot of corporate clients that say, you know what, I want a beautiful suit and I want to look different every day and I want to be comfortable and I want to make a statement. So I mean, it's a very growing market, baby steps, but it'll get to a point where a lot of people can afford to walk into a studio and say, please make me 10 suits, 10 shirts, 10 whatever for work and again for personal use.
Yeah, because I did a little research and I found that it's not the price sensitivity is not a thing. Like generally when a consumer comes to your customer, they're not price sensitive when they want a bespoke thing, but there still seems to be some other things that are lacking in terms of us getting us from where we are as an industry to further on.
I mean, I fully agree with you in a sense that, I mean, I get some clients that walk in and they're like, you know what, all I care about is quality, beautiful clothing. So I wouldn't say that for them, for most of my clients, pricing is much of an issue. I think the issue is that they want quality clothing that can last them for a very long time.
And then you as a designer, are you able to provide some of the quality required, because also we have issues in terms of raw materials, in terms like industry, there's not enough fabrications, there's not enough skilled work in terms of tailoring and seamstresses. There seems to be like a what is this, a brain drainage, because the old people who used to know how to do these things are like aging and out of the system.
Well, in my case, it's a bit different because I train my staff. So I will get someone that has a knowledge of sewing, but because I'm very pedantic in terms of my finishes and how my garments look, I make sure that I go and I curate everything. I would sit with an individual and I'll teach them how to make patterns the way I know how to make patterns, and I'll make sure that I make a replica of myself to a point that even if I'm not there, they're able to carry out the whole process in my absence. And I get the whole idea of now all the people that are equipped enough to carry the work, all of them are now being phased out. The thing is, if we had more schools that could educate, I mean, there was a project that I wanted to establish where you go and you teach people from the townships in terms of how to be more self-sufficient, and again, teaching them quality and how to do things right, and being able to go through a garment and make sure that you make best quality garments.
And what happened with that program?
I'm still at it.
Okay.
It's on the pipelines. It's one of those things that are in my short-term goals.
Yeah. And then why do you think that the fashion industry, the fashion sector in South Africa doesn't get much of the support, especially from government or private sector? Meanwhile, you sit in there and you employ like X amount of people, and that way you creating jobs. There seems to be like this fashion thing.
There is a big
not too sure where to put it. Is it part of arts? Is it part of
the issue? The issue that I've noticed, it's about who you are and who you know, more than what you're doing and what you're offering to our economy. I mean, I got invited to showcase at New York Fashion Week last year, and again I got invited this year. I went to the DTI and I wanted to apply for funding. Just to get like a grant so that I can go showcase and expand. I mean, if my company grows, it means it also adds on to the South African economy. And I was told that I must take my money and go and showcase and come back and give them receipts and they'll pay me. I don't have that 500, 600,000 lying around to can go showcase and come back and show them the receipts.
But is it that general? I think that's that general business model.
But I mean,
that you have to pay for yourself.
It's
not that it makes sense, or I'm justifying it.
It's a business model that does not make sense. I mean, for them to say, no, we'll give you a letter and say, what if now I go and I do a loan, I get a loan and I come back and they're not able to pay it back? What happens now? It means I'll have to close doors.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to my 9 employees?
That's a question. I don't have the answer. Well, I can speculate what would happen, but yeah.
So I mean, my biggest issue is, I mean, we talk about how, but I mean, I'm glad with the new president. He's been having low dialogues here and there about how to build on to our arts and culture, and how to also build on textiles, manufacturing textiles. Because I mean, it's a booming market. And I mean, I look at my American clients and across the whole of Europe, where I get people calling me randomly requesting that I courier things to them. It's a market that's not tapped into, that can get better. Only if they could invest more in it. If they could put more money in arts and culture, and again in the clothing and textile manufacturing and textile industry. By investing in it, they will reap the rewards at a later stage.
True. Otsile, if you were a dean of a fashion institution or head of department, how would you change the curriculum so that it benefits the future kids who go to fashion design school, so that they're equipped enough when they get into the working world?
I mean, personally, I feel that they should focus again not only on just the design side of fashion. They should focus again on the business side of fashion. If someone goes and studies fashion, they must also have accounting. They must also have digital marketing, because I mean, we're moving into that space. They must have other small integrated courses that will equip them in such a way that when they get into the work environment, they're equipped enough to can withstand anything that's thrown at them.
Okay, so give me 3 modules that you did that you would swap out with the new ones now.
I mean, trend forecasting.
Yeah.
I feel the history of fashion. Yes, I understand we have to know the history of fashion, and we have to understand certain trends and where they come from and where they originate from. It's always good to know your history to understand the future, which is fine. But I feel like we're at a fast-paced world, and if we want to know anything about point of reference or some form of history, you can still go research on your own. But for you to spend a whole year doing the history of fashion, I find that to be a waste of time.
Yeah.
And pattern making, extremely vital. I would keep that. Trend forecasting. I feel the world is evolving so fast, because back in the day we used to have the whole thing of trickle up and trickle down theory, where we would always follow the European fashion. But things have changed with social media, with the internet. Now whatever that happens in the US, we want it now. Whatever that happens in Africa, they want it now. And there's a huge shift that I'm noticing, that a whole lot of European countries that we used to look up to, they now coming down to us for inspiration. They focusing on us for inspiration. I look at a whole lot of trends that you find in Africa, now you see them in America, as opposed to back in the day where we'd have to watch what they're doing and then it trickles down to us. And I mean, even the whole trends. I mean, I remember when I was studying trends, we used to have this thing where we talk about a 5-year trickle up or down, where it will be the introduction of a certain style. Then from introduction, you move up to like what do you call? Where it picks up and it gets to maturity. So you'd have like a 5-year
model.
Yeah, you'd have a 5-year model, where from the first year you're introducing a style, then it starts picking up momentum, the growing stages, and then from the growth, then it goes to peak
maturity,
plateaus,
decline,
and then it starts declining. Right now it's no longer like that. We don't have to wait for 5 years to wear something that was in Europe this season.
Yeah.
We wanted, I mean, their winter, we want to wear it in our winter immediately. We're not going to wait for next year's winter to wear it.
Yeah. And then,
which makes it again very difficult for fashion buyers. Because remember now, a whole lot of big South Africa, and I think maybe that's why Edcon is not doing that well, because Edcon is always late. And that's why Edcon will not be able to compete with your H&Ms and your Zaras and all of that, because they're always behind in terms of everything that they do. Because when I was still studying, their motto was for their buyers to travel and go abroad. They go and they look at the different styles, they come back and they present that to their board, and when they present to the board would look at it, and after they look at it, then they choose the styles that they want to go with and tweak them wherever they tweak them, however way they tweak them, and then go back to China, and then from China then they're going to go and place an order. That order will take about 3 to 6 months to get to South Africa. Once it gets to South Africa, it's our season, at the right season that is supposed to be here, then they now filters through to the stores. That is a long time. That takes way too long. Imagine if right now a company like Edcon was to invest in manufacturing textiles in South Africa. Imagine if they went to invest in that instead of wasting time and shipping going to China. Yes, I understand the labor and production in China will be a bit cheaper, but think about it. If they were to produce locally, that will save them a lot of time. The minute there's a trend, they can put it in production now and have it ready now, as opposed to now waiting a good 3 to 6 months for the thing to come to South Africa.
Yeah, but it's so complex, because then you need to like develop mills that makes all these fabrics, and then would we have like factories that can produce like synthetic fibers?
But we can.
Yeah,
we can as a country.
We just don't have those structures right now.
But fashion is that it's a very fast-paced industry.
Yeah,
it's so fast-paced that and it needs people that are willing to adapt to the environment, because it's a forever changing environment.
Yeah.
If you're gonna have a CEO of a company that's been there for like the past 30 years, that with their personal style being a suit or clean well-made clothes, you understand that times have changed so much that we've got a vast variety of different looks and feels and styles that are trending right now. You get the hippies, you get the smart casual, you get like a whole lot of different styles, and it becomes very difficult for them to now buy for a certain individual. So as far as that is concerned, that is very tricky as to who do you hire. Are you going to hire a fashion buyer that's going to focus on your certain kind of ready to wear, or you're going to hire multiple different types of fashion buyers with different aesthetics? Then you're able to cover a larger portion of the pie.
Yeah. Okay, let's zone it back to your house. You recently debuted at SA Fashion
Yes.
Week, and can you please tell me about that collection?
The collection is very, very, very dear to my heart, and it's mainly based on my relationship with Solo Zotile Langa, and throughout the whole year we've been reinventing men's fashion, because I felt like whenever men go to events, they always wear your traditional suits, and there's so much that you can do with the traditional suit. So what we tried doing is reinventing every single suit that we made for him this year. So the collection was basically inspired by everything we've done for him this year.
Oh wow, that's incredible. And how many looks?
In total, we had 17 looks, and we had to narrow it down to 15 looks.
Okay. And then can you please speak on your relationship with Leroy Mack, because he's one of the people that you really started working off with from the beginning.
Let me tell you a funny story. It's funny how people don't even know who Otis Seflo is, or who Otsile Sefolo is. They know Otis Seflo, but they don't know who Otsile is. I got someone, they're like, oh, so you are the face behind. I'm like, no, it's fine, because I mean a whole lot of them think that Leroy is actually their designer at Otis Seflo, because Leroy is always in Otis Seflo, but Leroy is a muse. Leroy is part of the family, and I do all the creations, and Leroy gets to model everything that we make.
Yeah. And then does he have creative input in terms of design, or?
I mean, it depends on what you're doing.
Yeah.
If like, to give you an idea, there's most of the time when we do shoots or we've got garments, it'll be one of those where he comes and it's like, I want this, I want that, and I want that for this particular event, and would go and get creative and come up with something and give it to him. And in most instances, he shops from what we already have. Like, I would have my summer spring collection, where I would put out like whatever shorts or t-shirts or the floral shirts that we just did a shoot with recently, and I'd call him and say, here's a couple items for you, and this is the look and feel that we're going for. And he will go and do his own shoot, and he carries out in terms of the creative processes and how the look and feel looks like, it's all on him. And we just make the clothes. He takes care of the creative direction.
Yeah. And then obviously working with people like Lyra and Mike, who's the muse, and also like a stylist who uses some of your products in the shoots that he's involved in, and getting somebody like Solo that you work with, who is also like a name, and how does that relationship affect the business?
I mean, it
does it move the needle?
It moves the needle a bit. The one thing that I want to touch on quick based on that is that working with celebrities can be very tricky. Very tricky in a sense that we spend as designers a lot of money making the garments. So you go and you spend ridiculous amounts of money and you make garments for someone to go and wear them once and then tweet. So from a financial point of view, you now have to sit down and weigh the pros against the cons. For the longest of time, I wasn't seeing returns, but only now I see returns. That, I mean, you get your 10-piece daughter who wore a black and white polka dot dress, and you're starting to see results in that, where a lot of people come back and like, oh, we want that dress, the 10-piece I wore. And I'd say that it's a very tricky market and it's a very tricky situation, but it's a well-proven method of advertising by using prominent people that have got the numbers, that have got that are influential, and you get them to translate that into sales.
And then you just came out of Fashion Week now,
yes.
Like a few days. Have you seen any movements in terms of inquiries, interest, orders?
The thing about Fashion Week is that I went into Fashion Week with a plan. So I didn't do Fashion Week without a plan. When I went to Fashion Week, I invited the relevant people that I want to work with, that I want to build relationships with, and that I can't even talk about right now. But I mean, I'm 10 steps ahead with everything that I do. I make sure that I plan properly and I know what I'm doing. I might not get anything directly from Fashion Week immediately, but I went there with a plan, knowing that I want so and so that I'm going to be collaborating with on my future projects, and I've got my investors that I'm like, okay, this is what we do, this is what we can do for you, and this is the look and feel, and just to show off and say we can do it at a more professional level.
Yeah. What do you know now that you didn't know then that you wish somebody told you?
What do I know now? If someone had told me that the fashion industry would be this difficult, I would have laughed at them. But now that I'm in it, it's extremely difficult. It's very taxing. Sleepless nights, a lot of sleepless nights. We've been blessed enough to have been super busy for the past 3-4 years, that non-stop. So I hear people talking about peak seasons and low seasons. For us, it's been peak throughout, and it's like it's peaking even more over the years. And I work ridiculous hours. Literally, you get here at like 9 o'clock, you leave at midnight, 2 a.m. And it's getting to a point where it's become a routine and it's normal. To a point that now I've sort of tried adjusting my team, where I've got the group that will come at night and the group that will work during the day, so that we're able to catch up and finish up a lot of work.
Yeah. And you still haven't considered brushing up your auditing business degree?
I can't go back there. I can't go back there. There's one code that I live by, and I will always stick to that. Allow your passion to become your purpose in life, and one day become your profession. And that is the one motto that I live by every day of my life. I can't go back to auditing. That is not my passion. My passion is who I am today and what I'm doing today.
Yeah. And what do you wish for your business?
There's a whole lot of big things that we're about to do. I want to tap into an international market, just showcase at the Ghana Fashion Week. Invited again to showcase at London Fashion Week, and I'm invited to showcase again at New York. And there's a company called NIMS that's been inviting me to a whole lot of their international events. And I feel that now we are ready to go and tap into that market. Ultimately, we want to see Seflo being a global brand. I'm not limiting it just to South Africa. Hence now I'm starting to go out abroad and go out of South Africa a bit more, because I want to tap into that market, because I understand that with South African market it's limited to a certain group. So now what better way to expand other than going out of South Africa?
Yeah. And then most of businesses, startup businesses, do not make it because they cannot fulfill the demands. So the demands are like basic economic supply demand, they don't match up. Right? You want this growth for the business, but when you get the demands like the orders, would you be ready to fulfill them?
I will. Hence now I'm sitting on a team of 9. The higher the demand means I have to employ more people to can meet the demand. And I personally feel that what better way to add on to the economy of South Africa by creating more jobs and more jobs. And the more exposed the brand, the higher the demand, and the higher the demand means we can hire and employ more people.
Yeah. What do you know for sure?
I know that Seflo is going to be a household brand. I know for sure that it's going to be a very lucrative business that will cater for millions and millions and millions of people. I know that we are going to do so well that not even anyone in South Africa can stop us. We're destined for greatness.
I believe in
working hard. I believe in being self-motivated, and I also believe in inner strength.
Cultural radar, what do you think is moving the needle right now?
What's moving the world right now is the confusion. And the minute we get ourselves out of that noise, especially the race noise, and we shift towards working as unity and synergizing, then things will fall into place.
Perfect. Thanks, Otsile.
Cool.
Done.
How did you do?
You did very well. Like you've been doing this for the past 10 years. You can fix your lights now.